I want to definitely kind of give you a little bit of a preface about Gary Brenner. Convention of States is a grassroots organization, and it was founded by, I believe Gary founded or was among one of the founders. And the intention is to restore power to the states because the federal government has pretty much gone way out of control. If you are keeping track of the numbers, folks, we are $21 trillion in debt. We are $1 trillion in deficit every year, which means we are spending $1 trillion more than we are getting via tax revenue. This is not good. Any other corporation would have gone by the wayside. It would have been defunct. But of course, the United States of America, we keep on spending money. It is absolutely outrageous. It is absolutely grotesque that our children are going to bear the brunt of this unbelievable debt. It's a calamity in the making because there's no way that we can continue to spend as we are spending and expect that it will ever be paid down. And remember, this is debt. It does not include the unfunded liabilities that people have promised down the road. So states like California and states like New Jersey, which operate in the fiscal red by promising things to their constituents, their union memberships, their money that they can promise them, but it's very, very, very unlikely that down the road they're going to ever get it. But by that time, the politicians will be out of office and they will have gotten elected time and time again. It is really, really always interesting to have Mr. Brenner on the show because he enlightens us about all of these kinds of things that we should really be paying attention to instead of the impeachment. So I really am looking forward to discussing what the updates are and what the progress has been state to state across the country. Of course, New Jersey is not, I don't hold much hope for New Jersey in the long term, but who knows? Maybe he'll surprise us with an update that is promising. So I'd love to get his take on the headlines as well. So Gary Brenner is joining us now. Mr. Brenner, how are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm great. How are you doing?
Well, I kind of just went off on my rant of the evening. Do you want to weigh in on any of what I said about the absolute irresponsible behavior of this Congress, being absolutely, preoccupied with things that are not going to yield any results while Rome burns, so to speak?
I'd be very happy to take a whack at that. And I first want to thank you for having us back on the show to have the opportunity to talk about Convention of States. I also just want to clarify something you said earlier about the founding of Convention of States. The two men that founded Convention of States are Mark Meckler and Michael Farris, and that was back in August of 2013.
Awesome. Yes, Mr. Meckler, I've heard him speak. Great speaker.
Mm-hmm. And about your comments about the federal government with the national debt and the budget deficit, Convention of States recognized from the beginning that the central part of the problem with governing in our nation is that a vast amount of power has centralized to the federal government and away from we the people, away from the states. That has caused a structural problem with governing our nation, and much more so than a personnel problem in Washington. We have this structural problem which needs structural changes to fix. So that is the impetus for Convention of States wanting to use the Article 5 Convention for Proposing Amendments process to fix the problem. The idea is that these amendments, which are extremely powerful, can fix this governing problem by rebalancing power between the federal government and the states and bringing it back closer to we the people.
And all of this is enshrined in the existing Constitution. I mean, the founders gave us an alternative to empower the states in the event that the federal government should basically go out of control.
That's exactly right. In Article 5, in the second clause of the original Constitution, is the Article 5 convention process, which the framers unanimously put there because they saw this coming, just what we're talking about. These men were brilliant, educated, prescient. They saw this coming, and they knew that if the Congress should become oppressive and out of control, and that same with the president, if the president had amassed too much power to the executive branch, those parties were not going to fix themselves. They knew that it was going to be up to we the people to be the final guardians of the republic, and they gave us the means to do this fix in Article 5 in the convention process. They wanted us to use it. If you believe in the Constitution, you need to believe in the entire Constitution, including this process. The Constitution was created, according to Professor Rob Natelson, as an integrated system, meaning the whole document needs to be used for it to be as effective as it should be. So we need to use this process now, while we still have the time to do it, and get these amendments proposed and then ratified back at the states in order to rein in the federal government.
And we've made progress on that front, haven't we? Why don't you give me an update since the last visit on what's happened year to year? I know that we had, what was there, like 15 states under our belt?
Right now, we are at 15 states, state legislatures that have passed our uniform application for the Article 5 Convention. That application is uniform across all states. So there are no issues with counting them together to reach the 34-state requirement. Last time we were on, I believe we were at, and this was in August of last year, I believe,
yes,
we were at 12 states. So this year, we've added 3 more states, Arkansas, Utah, and Mississippi, and we are now at 15.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And do you find that obviously the challenge is greater, perhaps in the Northeast with the, I guess and certainly the left coast too, because it's these are blue populated states, so there is some more resistance, isn't there?
There is. That's a great point, Joe. There is more resistance, but our position at Convention of States is that what we are working towards should be appealing to all Americans, and that is to restore liberty, to have a culture of liberty, a culture of self-governance where we can decide how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis and make those day-to-day decisions about ourselves and our families closer to home. That's at the heart of what we're trying to do, is to bring back that governing decision-making power closer to us. With that power is responsibility, right? The two go hand in hand, and that is also involves restoring our liberty so that we can decide how to live our lives and make the best decisions. We believe that we know how to make the best decisions for ourselves. That's why we want those decisions made closer to home with our state lawmakers who are more accessible to us, more accountable to us than the federal lawmakers, and not to mention the nameless, faceless bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. We don't even know who they are, much less have any access to them, making those decisions for us about what kind of light bulbs we have, what kind of cars we drive, what kind of toilets we have, how our children are educated. We want those decisions made closer to home and should be made closer to home.
Terrific. Hold that thought. Gary, we're going to hold you over until the next segment. Stick around. This is the Jersey Joe Show on the Voice of New York, 710 WOR. Back with Gary Brenner of Convention of States on the other side of the break. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Joined by Gary Brenner of Convention of States. Gary, it is, of course, very telling that currently Congress is considering a short-term continuing CR to fund the government until December 20th. And, of course, this is going to give the big spenders in the government leverage to use the threat of a government shutdown over the holiday as a means to pass the budget. So this, again, goes to what we keep doing in our current system and how it's gone out of control because we keep kicking the can down the road. Can you speak to that and how the Article 5 can change that? And also, let's talk about term limits as well, because obviously that's part of what you're trying to get done as well.
Yes, I heard not long ago in the news that the current budget deficit is as big as it's been in the last 7 years again, which just further illustrates the fact that regardless of which party is in power in Washington, which party controls Congress, which party has the White House, we're still going in the same wrong direction that we've been going in for decades now, with very little exception. We need to get an amendment, for one thing, to limit spending, limit Congress's spending. We need to get an amendment to limit Congress's power to tax, limitations on taxation. These amendments can help get our fiscal house in order nationally, and I think you were getting at we're on an unsustainable course fiscally. The Congressional Budget Office is explicit, saying that the course we're on is unsustainable and will eventually cause a fiscal crisis. We're kind of building a house of cards with our economy, and we know what happens with houses of cards, and it's not going to be pretty when it collapses. This is how we can regain a measure of control over the fate of our nation. And in fact, we believe this is the essential way. And if we don't do it this way, it's not going to happen.
Because, we have often spoken about how every now and again, when obviously we vote in who we consider the right people, we expect so much, and oftentimes the same continues, right? So this really goes beyond that. It just doesn't work. There's got to be a way to tamp it down. No party, regardless of right or left, ever cuts spending.
That's right, Joe. We had Calvin Coolidge is the last president that reduced the size of government, and we just cannot wait for another Calvin Coolidge or another President Reagan to come along. It's up to us is the idea, and central to the success of what we're trying to do, if I may, is our mission in Convention of States, and that is to build the biggest engaged army of self-governing grassroots activists in the history of the United States. And with that mission, we have a couple of aspirational goals as well, which are key to achieving the success of reigning in the federal government, and that we want to restore and bring about a change of attitude to a culture of self-governance. We want to restore representative government as defined in the U.S. Constitution, and we can do that with this Article 5 convention process, an Article 5 convention for proposing amendments. And just to be clear, an Article 5 convention can do nothing more than propose amendments. Anything that the convention proposes needs to be sent to the states to decide about ratification. And only if 38 states, 3/4 of the states, decide to ratify a proposed amendment, only then it becomes valid to the Constitution. Otherwise, a proposed amendment does nothing. So what I'm getting at is there are checks and balances, safety features built into the system by the framers and by historical precedent as well since the founding, making an Article 5 convention relatively safe. So this is something that's important for people to understand.
And then, of course, the term limits, which and I was divided on this issue because, of course, there are those fiscally responsible congressmen and senators. They're very few, but they're a couple. And, you always think that perhaps they can be that one person who can stand against the army of spenders. So you always thought that an informed public would be able to vote people they want out and keep people they want in. But we have really people who have made careers in public office. Nancy Pelosi's been in office 32 years. Maxine Waters has been in office 28 years, and so on and so forth. This was never the intention of the founders to have career, lifetime elected officials, was it?
That's exactly right. And part of that is because the life expectancy back at the founding was around 47 years old. About 53 years old. So they just kind of didn't foresee the vast increase in life expectancy, which is reasonable not to foresee that. So they didn't really see the need, I think, for that reason, partly, to have term limits. But, one of the things with term limits is, okay, maybe we're going to lose some good people being taken out of office by the term limits, but we're going to also gain a lot more good people through term limits also. By having a healthy rotation of people in and out of office, we'll get more good people wanting to hold office, wanting to run and wanting to win elections. So that's an important thing about term limits is it's not just losing good people, it's gaining good people and getting rid of bad people also.
Agreed. So let's turn to New Jersey specifically, of course, because that is always, we are approaching, I believe, the point of no return in New Jersey, and we've kind of been on the approach for many, many years. What is the Convention of States strategy specifically for New Jersey?
I'm glad you asked, Joe. We are focusing on building the grassroots support for Convention of States in New Jersey. Not to say that's all we're doing. We also have a strong legislative push. We have an outreach to groups and coalitions. But our primary focus is on building up grassroots supports because that is where the power really lies. I think it was one of the Supreme Court justices in the early last century said that the power of our elected representatives is justly derived from the voting public, and the politicians know that, and so we need to get the public behind what we're doing to influence the state lawmakers to pass our application in Trenton and become one of the 34 states needed to trigger the convention for proposing amendments.
So do you believe the New Jersey legislature will pass the COS resolutions application for an Article 5 convention for proposing amendments?
We believe they will once we build up enough grassroots support for it. And one of the things we say is there's no problem too big that enough grassroots cannot solve. So we are making a lot of progress with building up grassroots support. We are almost at 26,000 petition signatures for New Jerseyans, and that number grows every day. We're building up our state activists and leadership team. We have an increasing number of district captains in the state legislative districts, and as well as active volunteers working on the various teams that we have. We have a follow-up team. So we're making progress. We're in the battle with all of our other brother states across the country, and we're in the fight here in New Jersey. One of the things too, Joe, about this is that eventually we expect that there's going to be amendments proposed at our convention, and New Jersey is going to be considering those amendments. So we need as much grassroots involvement and support for what we're doing, even at that point. The more, the better. So we we're keeping that in mind as we work and do our groundwork and building up this support. Every day we're reaching out to people through various means, not just on media, but on by internet, by phone, and we do a lot of face-to-face, word of mouth. That is, in fact, probably the primary way that we do what we're doing is word of mouth, building up relationships face-to-face with people. We've stressed heavily building up relationships in growing the grassroots support.
So what are the, I guess, effects of Convention of States that what effect will that have on New Jersey if it's implemented? Can you kind of just maybe paint a picture of what kinds of changes would come about as a result?
Yeah, probably I expect for one thing, New Jersey, if there are fiscal restraints imposed on the federal government, I would expect that New Jersey would be sending less money to Washington, D.C. and keeping more money here and having more control over that money. Former U.S. Senator Tom Coburn says that by average, the federal government exercises control over about 2/3 of an average state's budget. About 67% of a state's budget is controlled by the federal government, according to former Senator Coburn. So this would be something that would help, I think, a lot with New Jersey's public finances, like
yes,
helping the bankrupt state pension system in New Jersey, for one thing, for example.
And it will also stem the exodus of corporations probably out of New Jersey, because that's obviously a contributing factor when the public sector is increasing and the private sector is escaping. Yeah,
I definitely believe that. And that certainly holds true for all of the states. The states were not meant to be federal agencies of the federal government or little fiefdoms of the federal government. They were meant to be, as a Supreme Court justice put it, laboratories of democracy. And that means that competition competition reigns. The more competition at the state level and closer to home, the better. It produces better ideas. So we want those ideas debated locally and closer to home so that the best ideas win. And, if one state has better ideas, yes, they're going to get more business. Businesses will tend to move there. People will tend to move there for jobs if another state has a better idea about a certain industry. So this is something that, if you look at it from a broader perspective, not just solely focusing on New Jersey, it would benefit the whole nation by promoting the best ideas nationwide. Eventually, the states that don't have those better ideas are going to catch on and say, hey, we need to do this too.
Right.
So looking at it from a broad perspective, it benefits the entire nation, then secondarily benefits individual states.
All right. Well, I certainly applaud your work and your unwavering challenge. I signed the petition today, actually. So I am part of your growing army, so to speak. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how the grassroots activists can get involved and where they go for more information, Gary?
People can go to our amazing website, conventionofstates.com. And by the way, once you're there, at the top of the page, you'll see a tab labeled Take Action. Click on that, and that'll bring you to a page telling you about how you can actually get involved and actively help us do what we're doing, become part of our team. We welcome people to join us. As I've been saying, as we've been talking about, we're based on grassroots activism. So please do that. Please join us. We're on social media, on Facebook. Take a look at our Convention of States page on Facebook. Each state also has a page on Facebook, Convention of States New Jersey, Convention of States New York, for example. Take a look at those pages, too. We're on Twitter at conventionofstates.com.
Great.
And I look forward to talking with people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate the update. You're always welcome here, Gary. And happy Thanksgiving to you. And be in touch. Okay.
Thank you so much, Joe, and happy Thanksgiving. And have a great night.
My pleasure.
Go to conventionestates.com, press the button, sign the petition. More importantly, get 10 of your friends to do the same. When you sign the petition, then that sends a letter to your state legislator. You go on the list in their district as a supporter. We deliver those lists to the state legislators. It means something to them.